Welcome to Poetry and with Cookies on a Sunday afternoon, take
Yeah.
three, because we just finished a lovely half-hour poetry reading with cookies with lovely guests, and I forgot to record it. I didn't know how to record. And then we started
Mm,
again just for you, and I didn't turn on the audio. But now I think we got video and audio.
um,
We're all together. We're here. Merry
mm,
Christmas.
Hi.
Welcome. We're here because my husband, Mark J. Mitchell, famous poet,
Mm,
and I'm Joanie Chester, famous for not knowing how to do Zoom. And we're here to bring you poetry and cookies. Lots and lots of cookies. Oh my gosh, look at all the Christmas cookies. So anyhow, we're here because poetry is good
mm,
for your soul,
mm.
and so are cookies. And we're how do we want to start this off? Okay.
Well,
Oh, right.
right.
This is our second Zoom webinar, and I'm still screwing up. But the first one was to launch his new book, Roshi San Francisco, which just came out. Wonderful book of poems, which are all inspired by San
Francisco.
Francisco. So, Mark, tell us why and how
Mm.
these poems were inspired by San Francisco.
I deeply love the city of San Francisco. I fell head and over heels in love with the city when we moved here 42 years ago. Um, so there's that. And for the last 8 years, I've been making my living as a tour guide, showing people around the city of San Francisco. Even before that, because the city is such a place, you always had visitors. People wanted to come and visit you in San Francisco. So we both spent a fair amount of time learning stuff about the city.
We learned every free thing you could do
Yeah,
because
well,
we
yeah,
have lots and lots of nieces and nephews.
there's that. Yeah, but actually, the cover boy there, that's a nephew.
That's our nephew CJ,
Yeah,
who's now going to be 30 in April.
yeah.
When I took him to his first Chinese New Year parade, book wrap around, you can see he's hanging from the Kearney Street sign.
Yep.
I believe he's being held up by one of our other nephews, Michael.
I believe
Hi,
so, but
Michael. Hi,
he
CJ.
didn't make the picture though.
No, he didn't.
Yeah, yeah. Although we like him all right.
We like him a lot.
Yeah.
Okay.
Um,
So, Mark, would you like to start by reading something from Roshi?
okay. Well, we will here, and this is kind of what it's like to be a tour guide here in the city, or probably anywhere. It is for connoisseurs of form. It is a sestina, which is a tricky form. He bragged. And we have an epigraph from Elizabeth Bishop, which is, should we have stayed home and thought of here? Pale sun and the pinprick pains return to your body like seasons, each cruel, pretty morning. Coffee, quick, then breakfast. Begin again, like repeated bars in sad, overwritten music. Cold commute bus, rough music leaks from a kid's headphones. Your pain is misplaced like steel bars on a third floor window. Baseball season coming at you fast as a pitch on an Arizona morning. T-shirted tourists ready for your morning circle. You want a voice like music and a driver who rolls fast through yellow lights and takes pains to keep your body from being seasoned with bruises as you speed past bars and landmarks. New construction and rebar slow you to a crawl, but catch morning light like a shortstop late in the season. Remember now that visual music is your job. You have to explain it all while not talking too fast to make sense. So your cold breakfast is bounced around. A motorcade bars your progress through two lights. Sirens pain your ears as you dissect the morning for people who treat your words like music they don't like. So starts the tourist season. But it means a big league season too, and pitchers' arms grow fast in desert light, while bats compose music with leather and landmark bars migrate. They'll return some morning to relieve lost souls of their pain, and your tiny pains are meant to season a spring morning. Flowers bloom too fast, becoming only colored bars, and light becomes music.
You managed to combine so many things that you love in one poem. San Francisco, showing off San
Francisco.
Francisco, baseball,
Yeah.
and music, all together in one place. That's just a magnificent poem. I love that. And I should say when he's doing his tour guide job, which of course disappeared with the pandemic at the beginning
with the tourists.
yeah, the tourists, everything went away in March, and so he's unemployed like the rest of us right now. But your job most of the time was on top of a double-decker tour bus,
Yes.
going around the sites of San Francisco, and as well as some walking tours.
Yeah.
So where did you take people walking?
I did walking tours. We did walking tours in North Beach, the old Italian neighborhood, and also the hotbed of the Beat Poets. In the Barbary Coast, the old rough and ready part of town, which is now the financial district, and Chinatown, because everybody wants to see Chinatown. Everybody's sort of Chinatown. And we kept doing that when they can. They eventually cut off the other two just because only one or two people were turning up for that.
Yeah.
Which is too bad. I love my North Beach tour.
Yeah. But you've got at least a couple of poems about Chinatown in Roshi, San Francisco, which he read at our book launch. The book launch, by the way, is on his YouTube channel. You can look at that. His channel is under Mark J. Mitchell. And that period is important. Punctuation is important because there is another Mark J. Mitchell on YouTube who doesn't use a period after the J, and he does something entirely different from what you do.
The education guy?
I don't know what he does.
There's an education guy. I know.
Yeah.
There's also a guy who died in Chicago in 1942.
Yeah. And the ice skater.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there was a mass murder too, but never mind.
Yeah.
But anyhow, his YouTube channel, we're just getting started on this social media stuff. So it includes the hour-long book launch that we did on December 5th. And also for the past couple of days, we've been going around the neighborhood filming Mark reading poems about specific locations.
Yeah.
So we've uploaded him not only reading the poem, but also telling about two locations. You want to talk about that?
Oh, well, talk about about a block and a half from us, down to my left, to your right, is St. Dominic's Catholic Church. And so I wrote a poem about that. It's a beautiful neo-Gothic Catholic church where something extraordinary happened. And that's in the poem, so you have to.
Yeah. And we uploaded that video last night.
Yeah, and also up about 4 blocks up Fillmore Street away from us here. One of the greatest paintings of the 20th century was painted. J. DeFeo painted a picture called The Rose. And I wrote a poem about that. And if you ever get a chance to see The Rose, it really needs to be seen in person. And it's at the Whitney Museum and probably never going to move again because it is just so huge.
It's like 2 tons. It's just enormous and just it's life-changing. Seeing it is life-changing. Anyhow, so Mark wrote a great poem about how they how the heck they got that thing out of her apartment back in 1967. Yeah. Anyhow, last time we did this sort of Zoom thingy, Mark's brother asked me to read. So Mark chose a poem for me to read from one of his other books, Soren Kierkegaard, Witnesses and Execution. One of my favorite book titles ever, right, Mark?
Yes, it is. That's a great title.
It just zooms off the shelf, but it's a great book because this includes a lot of his greatest hits. Mark has published over 1,000 poems. You didn't publish them.
Yeah.
Over 1,000 of Mark's poems have been published, which is really an extraordinary body of work. He's written 7 books of poetry and 3 novels. And they're all available on his website, which I'll talk about later in the commercial part. But right now I'm going to read about a familiar San Francisco landmark. His poem is called My Bridge. I make my way towards the Golden Gate on foot. I know I'll never reach the bridge. That's not the point. I just want to engage my feet and eyes and not be out too late. Because when the tide turns, I feel the pull of islands I'll never see and the spell the moon speaks to coax water out of wells. If I'm not home, I'll vanish like some gull on an updraft. The bridge is just a lure that my saunter chose. It leads me away and calls me back. It's tall and red and pure. as some Bach fugue I'll never learn to play. My feet lead me to it, quick but unsure, and I watch the pale sun gold wash the bay. You snuck some music into that one too.
Yeah, well,
I love that poem.
Music is kind of our theme today.
Yeah, that's right. We did. I asked you to choose a theme, and you
Yeah.
came up with music, and you've got plenty of music in your poems. And
Yeah.
someday, we hope that some wonderful composer will set some of his poems to music. What would you like to read next, my dear?
All right, well, I want to read another one from Roshi here. I'll hold it up again. I'll read it backwards. And San Francisco has a storied history in what is known as the noir genre, film noir and detective novels. The great Dashiell Hammett lived here, worked as a Pinkerton detective here. The Maltese Falcon is set here in San Francisco. The Conversation by Francis Ford Coppola also, and Francis, of course, we get to call him Francis because he occasionally lives here. So we get to call him Francis. And we would do tours at night tours, and we would also finish up your day at this time of year, and you'd be coming home on a bus, and it's dark, and maybe the fog's a little loose and getting the street damp, and or maybe it rained the night before, and there's reflections off the blacktop as you go through Chinatown on the 30 Stockton bus, and the stores are all closed, and it's kind of dark and threatening. Then you go through the Broadway tunnel, and you wind up in the bright lights of Union Square. Or you're heading home, you have to go across town, heading to the Tenderloin, out to the avenues. And you can feel very much like, especially if you hear a stray bit of jazz coming from somebody's window, you can feel very much like you are in a film noir. And so this one is called Noirish. Good Friday darkening slowly, and Blue Monk playing quiet behind me. The moon stops above California Street, its lamp hung like notes dropped by a dead man years ago. My pen's heavy. I've misplaced my workshop and spilled my meters. It will pass, I know, but right now, time itself has come unstrung. If I still smoked, I would step outside and light a cigarette. That small drama alone would speed time along. It's that kind of night. The piano finishes. Something happened. And I'm deserted here without a tune. Just ghosts for company. Because the wind's so cold, I retreat. That still moon is too bright.
Very noirish. Now, speaking of the Stockton Tunnel, there's something very interesting at the top of the tunnel as you're looking down below at Stockton Street. Tell me about this.
If you're looking towards Union Square, to your right is Burrett Street, and there's a plaque there that commemorates a fictional event. If you have not seen or read The Maltese Falcon, you might want to mute. A little spoiler alert here, because there's a plaque there that marks that corner of Burrett Street as the location where Bridget O'Shaughnessy, or for movie buffs, Mary Astor, shot and killed Miles Archer, Sam Spade's partner, in The Maltese Falcon.
That's the current plaque.
Yes.
And I say current because people keep stealing them.
People keep stealing them. That's one of those things people keep stealing. Like they also steal Haight and Ashbury street sign.
Right.
That's why Haight Ashbury, the street signs are much higher up than other street signs.
Did you know that?
Yeah.
The things you'll learn from a tour guide.
Because people keep stealing them, and people keep because really, if you didn't know you missed this, now you know that you must have in a home a plaque commemorating the murder of a fictional character, because you have to.
You gotta love a city that puts up plaques to commemorate the deaths of fictional characters.
Yeah, well, yes, I'm in favor of that. We could cover the city with them. Really.
Um, yeah, and when I think of Burrit Alley and that plaque, of course, the Maltese Falcon is one of my favorite movies ever. Great, great, great movie, great, but book, and a movie that follows the book very closely, with a couple of exceptions.
Mm.
But if you watch the movie, the noirish atmosphere is enhanced by all the fog. Fog at night.
Yeah.
Fog at night in San Francisco is very noirish.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it saves a lot on. You don't have to have the fog machines because we provide that. That's in the contract.
That's right. Okay, what's up next, my dear?
Okay, well, we'll continue on the music theme. We're going to go to another book. This is a little chapbook, as it's known in the trade, called Artifacts and Relics. Because
and for those who aren't in the trade, what is a chapbook?
A chapbook generally is a short collection of poems, usually around 25 to 30 pages tops. Some of them are smaller, depends on the publisher, and some people publish mini chapbooks. So there's one I really want to get.
And they tend to be on a theme?
They will tend to be, depends on, it helps. It's a selling point when you're trying to get someone to publish a chapbook to give it a theme.
This is a lovely little chapbook. Yeah. And so what are you going to read?
Well, we're on the theme of music, as I said. And so we're going to go back a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. And I'm going to read the first poem that I ever wrote for this young lady right here, which was actually rather quickly published by now.
We met in college at UC Santa Cruz in 1974.
Oh.
And he kind of swept me off my feet with the poem.
So this is 46-year-old poem called The Music Lover. The music lover sits at a table, reflecting her breakfast as if she were a window. Rising, she approaches a cup of tea, wanting to make an offering, hoping not to remain always a pane of glass. She intones remembered phrases. She clears the dishes. Her walk to the mirror becomes a procession. She is a music lover. She wants to join the choir. And if you were there, she would put altar cloths on the bed because sheets are not enough. She would chant for you as she cooked your eggs. But something in her eyes would say that you are on trial. She wants you to tell her that she is not a window. Then she may take you to her bed. She is the music lover. She wants to play you.
I don't know how many of you have had poems written about you, but that kind of knocked my socks off at that tender age. Nobody had ever written a poem for me. I'd never been a muse before. Now I've been a professional muse now for a number of years. Honey, you've earned a cookie. Okay. 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 See, cookies, anyone? Can't see them. There you go. So the cookie thing. I come from a long line of strong Danish women, and Danish women bake cookies. That's what we do. And every December, I don't bake cookies most of the year. He has to go out and buy his own damn cookies the rest of the year. But in December, this house becomes a cookie baking machine, just night after night after night. And I can't help baking them and giving them away. And if you happen to buy any of Mark's books and want to pick up your signed books in person, you get Christmas cookies with them. What's not to like? You might also get a private reading. We're doing a private reading, private. It's going to be on the sidewalk at California Street tomorrow morning at 10. But
I'm wondering what time we can meet.
Yeah, yeah, I got to actually get up for that. But yes, okay, so that's the cookie thing.
Right. Now, this next one is about a completely different kind of young woman.
And it's also from Artifacts and Relics.
Also from Artifacts and Relics. Which, again, available for purchase. But
is this the it's that one.
Yep.
Okay, so there's backstory for this. What's it called?
It's called The Existential Ecdesiast.
How's that for a title? So as we all know from Gypsy Rose Lee, an ecdesiast is a fancy name for a stripper. What was her line?
Well, at these prices, I'm an enthusiast.
Yes, well.
When she was playing Minsky.
Right, and this was inspired by a dream I had one day 25 years ago when I woke up and said, Mark, I had the weirdest dream that I was in a Berlin nightclub with all the philosophers and everything, circa 1925, 1930, and I had a wool cap on and layers and layers and layers and layers of heavy wool sweaters and socks and everything, and I was supposed to strip, and so I'm stripping existentially to taking off these heavy sweaters layer after layer, and he came up with this poem,
Yeah.
much better than my dream.
And you kind of have to imagine this from the music point of view as being accompanied by the worst band ever.
Yeah, not
Yeah.
not like the Kit Kat Club from Cabaret,
No.
but Kit Kat Club on major drugs.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the existential easiest. She smiles at nothing, at being, slips out of her socks slowly, kicking one to Carl, the other to Martin, arcing them graceful to the smoky spotlight. They look so lonely. She is bored and tired of taking off the same black sweater, showing off her uneven slopes, tired of stripping from essence to existence for a crowd of heavy smokers. Tonight, her dirty underwear has lost its glamour, and she cannot create responsibility for her beret. Tips are lousy. She does not match her definition. She thinks this is not being, but it's better than nothingness.
So much better than the dream. Oh,
Little existential joke.
little existential joke. Okay. Where should we go from here?
Well,
Which of these do you
we're
want to
going to go to Munich.
So, some of the people who have been following me follow me on Twitter, and I've met a lot of people on Twitter, and for some reason my Twitter feed is very heavily weighted toward public transit fans and bicycle fans and city planning fans. But here we are, we live in a city, and let's talk about Muni.
Oh, yeah,
Let's talk about Muni, because my single most important, my single most valuable possession is my senior Clipper card. It takes me everywhere. It's in my pocket somewhere.
It's very valuable, so she takes good care of it.
It's right here on my person somewhere. Anyhow, talk about Muni while I find it.
San Francisco is a city of public transport. We do have some of the best public transport in the world. Although, again, all we do is complain about it, because that is what you do with any public transit service. Standing there at the corner going, I have to wait 3 minutes? 3 minutes for a bus?
Nah.
You get a little upset about it. It's just the way it is. But it is our system, and it's what gets us around. And it's, for a long time at least, you saw everybody on Muni. You saw socialites, you saw the desperately poor, you saw newspaper columnists, you
Students
saw,
and little old ladies and
supervisors.
I used to love, when we first moved to the city in 1978, I would look for them, the little old ladies in nice cloth coats with a circle pin and a hat and gloves. I loved seeing them on Muni. Once upon a time, a friend of yours wrote a poem, like 3 lines, about what a bus.
Well,
bus is.
somebody I heard just once at a reading in San Jose. I can't even remember her name, because she just interviews, but and it's called Bus Poem. A poem like a bus takes you from one place to another and has windows.
It's absolutely perfect.
This is before Windows was an operating system.
Yeah, that's an absolutely perfect description of a poem and a bus.
Yeah.
And we're lucky enough to live on a major bus line that has not been disrupted by the pandemic. We're right on the one California.
So I get to work back when I was employed. I get to work on the bus. I work on a bus, but I also take a bus to work, different bus. And when I do that, and when I'm trying to write a poem every day, as I do for the last 30 years through Lent, you write about what you see, and what I see are the people on the buses. And here is a public transport fugue. A woman on the bus licks her glass lips. They taste slightly of her husband. Anything else would be a sin. The glass windows rattle. The bus slides past retail sins to tempt her lips. Winter spring fog keeps her cool and firm. The cord slightly tickles her finger. A bell sounds like broken glass. She hides her sins behind a fixed smile. She has no choice. None.
There are more Muni poems and that was from Roshi,
That was
right?
from Roshi, yeah.
That was from Roshi, and there are more Muni poems in there.
Yeah.
Because it's a big part of our lives, and we are very grateful to Muni and
And the
all
drivers.
all the people who work at Muni and who take us from one place to another.
Yes.
So, where are we in this?
Okay, well, we're kind of at the big finish here.
Okay.
Yeah.
But before we get to the big finish, it's time for a commercial. So, all of Mark's books are available on his little website, which I will put. This is all being uploaded to YouTube, so I will put it in the comments at YouTube. Mark slash. Wait, and you've got more books than that too.
Yeah, these are the ones that are handy.
These are the ones that are handy. Those are the poetry books, and he also has a couple of really fun novels, wonderful novels, The Magic War and The Night Prisoner. So we'll put the link in the YouTube description. And I think that's it. So that's the end of the ad.
That's the end of the ad. Okay.
But okay. So during the pandemic, a lot of people, us included, have lost their jobs. And as you're thinking Christmas presents, the best way you can support independent artists is to buy their work. If you have friends who are musicians, buy their CDs. Filmmakers, buy their films. Help promote their films. Artists, photographers buy their work, and writers buy their books. They make great presents, and they're also wonderful just for yourself. Like I said, poetry is good for the soul. So
now I gotta find the
while he's looking for that poem.
It was in here. It was in here a little while ago.
It was in here just a little while ago. And if you have any questions for us, you can comment on his YouTube channel. Subscribe. We're going to be putting up more poems. We're going to be going around the city filming him reading poems about the places, like Washington Square, Haight Street. I mean, there are lots of locations in Roshi. Did you find the book?
Yes, I did.
Okay, so let's talk about this poem.
I'm very proud of this poem because for a long time we had a neighborhood newspaper called the New Fillmore, founded by David Ish, who has passed away, and then carried on by Tom Reynolds.
And the New Fillmore ran from 1986 until just this time last year. Yeah. It just closed down, sadly, this time last year.
And I wrote for them quite often. They also published my poems. And they published the poem I'm about to read. And it appeared in the paper. And a few months later, I'm at a cocktail party at, I believe, David Ish's house. It was one of his I fooled him again parties for celebrating getting a new issue of the New Fillmore out. And talking to the wife of the great neighborhood saxophone player, Sonny Lewis. And she said, yeah, that poem of yours that they printed a couple months back, I had that cut out and it's taped over my sink. And that was just a thrill that this poem has entered somebody's life so much that they want to keep it in front of them while they do the dishes, while they do their daily chores. And it is a love poem about doing daily chores. And it's called Domestic Ballade. Stew cooks on a stove, bubbles smile across brown gravy. Household chores, busy hands, spices tempt you while you sort clean socks. You rise, stir before something sticks, an excuse for more aromatic steam. It's all right, you think, this life, afternoon light slanting down on clean counters, still pointing up clean counters, sun, pointing up something not quite white. There's always more, you're never done. While wiping up, you move the news, wondering where this headline happened. You should know when you used to. You're almost sure. At age 9, you wrote a report, got a fine grade. Somehow it slipped from your head, gone with all your teachers said. Today you'd like to have it. One tiny fact you know you've read. There's always more. You're never done. Well, you just sigh and stir the pot, breathing deep. Add some basil, salt. There are things you haven't forgotten. True, those unread books aren't your fault. No, you were too busy to assault them. Some things you won't know. Big deal. Physics and kings, other unreal facts. It was more duty than fun that made you choose excess zeal. There's always more. You're never done. Windows steamed. You mutter a prayer. Recall who you're cooking for. Where she likes to be kissed. How her hair frames her face. How her smile can stun you still from across a room. There are rewards. You've more than your share. There's always more. You're never done.
Cookie? Um, yeah, did I mention that one of the perks of being in love with and married to a poet is he writes such beautiful poetry for me. And he cooks. Oh my God, he does most of the cooking too. He's really a good cook. Stews and soups and such being your specialty. Um, just before we go, I just one thing that I want to mention is uh, we spent a lot of time talking about poetry and what makes a poem. What elevates a poem from just words on a page to poetry. And I want to just because Mark's poems tend to be formal. They tend to follow. He mentioned sestinas, ballads, sonnets.
Well, you know, they're formally informed no matter what. I do think that if you were going to be a poet, you ought to know how to write informed. You ought to know how to write a sonnet. Anybody can write a sonnet. And I actually talked to a poet. Said, "Yeah, my sonnets are 13 lines." I just wanted to slap him, but it was a Zoom meeting, so I couldn't. Because no, one rule about a sonnet is it got to be 14 lines. Everything else is extra, but 14 lines is the rule. But if you don't know how to do that, it's like being a musician who doesn't know how to read music. And it might work out, and especially maybe in rock and roll, again, you know, work for Paul McCartney, but not there aren't many Paul McCartneys out there. And so you'll be better at your art if you know how to do these things. You don't have to do your poetry that way, but if you know how to do them, you're going to write better poems. It's going to restrain you. And also one problem I've had with especially contemporary poetry is people just keep going. They run off at the mouth. When you have chosen a form or a form, generally the line chooses the form for me. I'll get a line and I go, that wants to be in a sonnet. That wants to be in a sestina. That's you know, that's what I can tell from that. But it has a stopping point. It has a point at which you're done, where you have to come to an end, and you don't just keep going. Well, that's a good thought. That's a good thought. Granted, the images don't relate at all. Who cares? You know. Ezra Pound said that literature is news that stays news, and that poetry is memorable speech, and there are ways to make that speech memorable. One of them is through intense imagery. He was writing this in the founding of the Imagist movement, and one of them is through sound. And the forms give you a sound, give you a musical set, and nobody's really complained that we've reached the end of the sonata. Nobody's said symphonies are done, because somehow people keep coming up with new things to make them fresh and bright, and that's the challenge with using an old form. But that is also the fun of it too, and we'll keep it alive. And fun is part of it because there's a gamesmanship to a formal poem. It's as Robert Frost said, writing without meter or rhyme is like playing tennis without a net. It's easy but kind of pointless. So I'm a great believer in that. And I enjoy it. And I like finding new forms. I write in Welsh forms. As a tour guide, I started studying Chinatown, and I learned the form of the traditional Cantonese folk song. And as far as I know, I'm the only person who tries to write that in English, but I do. So
Ghazals, you write
I write
ghazals,
ghazals. Yes, ghazals are very big right now, very hot.
are they?
Oh yeah, they're
Okay.
very hot, and
Probably because of you.
well, they're it's a good form.
And where's ghazal from?
Ghazals are Urdu from Persia, and it's kind of a rap thing too. It's kind of got a hip hop thing to it because that was around the campfire or the caravanserai, and then the poet would get up and have to do this specific form, and how you could get to that rhyme you had to get to, and everybody's going, yep, and whoa.
And you've got to form that.
And you got to get there, yeah.
Well, okay then. The things you learn hanging out with the poet. So, if you have any questions for Mark, if you want to be on his mailing list, which now we're just starting the mailing list, but if you go to his website, which I believe, is that backwards enough for you? Mark-J-Mitchell at Square site, I believe is. Anyhow, we'll send it to you. I just want to give a shout out to those of you who showed up for the live recording of this today. Alex and Mariah and Stanley, and I think Marianne tried to get in there. Just thank you to everyone. Thank you for your support. Thank you for buying books. And again, if you want to get your signed copy of Roshi or any of his books in person in San Francisco, just connect with us. We'll set up a time to do a safe, socially distanced, touchless, curbside drop-off. You might get a poetry reading, and you'll definitely get
Christmas cookies.
You'll definitely get Christmas cookies because I've got gazillions of them here, gazillions. So come by and have some cookies. Thank you, everyone. See you next time. We're going to be doing more of these. So hang out with us, okay? And how do we end that? Okay, bye-bye.